right. Welcome, everybody. This thing sounds so sick. Welcome, everybody, to the post draft edition of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with Sean Williams and Bob Rose. So, how much happened this weekend?
Not a whole lot. It's been a slow news week.
Yeah, between the Saints draft and the 17 undrafted free agents, and then they signed Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, this Monday. So, it's kind of a whirlwind today.
I want to start by asking you a question, Alan and Bob.
Okay.
Okay, everybody knows that the Saints moved up. I was watching Bob when that announcement came through, and I could see the fear in his eyes. And I want to ask you the question that seems to be all over sports talk radio here. How are you guys with the price that we paid to move up to get Olave?
Bob, you want to take that one first, or you want me?
No, I could go first. And you're right. Brendan Boylan and I, were live through most of the first round, and when that happened, I was absolutely terrified that they were going to pick a quarterback. And I made no secret that I'd absolutely lose my shit.
Yes, you were pretty plain spoken about that on the air, I might add.
Yeah, when they picked Olave, and then we heard what the compensation was. And for those of you that don't know, the Saints moved from number 16 to number 11 with the Washington Redskins. And in the process, they gave up a third-round pick and a fourth-round pick in this year's draft. I love the depth of this draft. I really did. And in a way, doing that cost them. But as usual with Sean Payton, the Saints identified who they wanted. They were aggressive in going to get him. I'm convinced the Saints believed that there was about to be a run on wide receivers coming, and they didn't know if Olave would get to 16. Drake London was already gone. Olave's Ohio State teammate Garrett Wilson went at number 10 to the Jets. So the Saints believed that to get Olave, they needed to move up, and I agree with them. I think they did.
I do too.
So I don't have a problem with giving up what they did. We saw a run on running backs and tight ends in the third and fourth rounds, which I believe would have been valuable to the Saints. But at the same time, you look at this roster, and even with injuries, decimating it last year, they still almost made the playoffs. Olave was what they needed at wide receiver, so I don't have a problem with them going up and getting him.
Okay, so I was trying to find the list. I cannot. But they went through the list of all the picks that the Saints gave up to make this move, going back to what they gave up in the trade, the
Eagles.
The Eagles trade.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on a second here. I just had it a second ago.
Which was also a first next year. An additional third this year, and a second in 2024. So,
right.
Yeah, so you do have to include that in the compensation, but if you're going to do that, you also have to include Trevor Penning, the 19th overall pick, in the deal as well.
Right. So you're looking at they gave up the 18th overall pick, the 101 overall pick, and the 237th overall pick. That was this year. Then next year's first-round pick and a second-round pick. So that's 5 picks. Then they gave up on draft day, they gave up the third-round pick, their other third-round pick, and their fourth-round pick. So that is 7 picks they gave up to get an extra one and then to move up to 11. Now, that's a lot to give up for one guy, or essentially 2 guys, if you want to count Penning, because you excuse me, sorry, you probably was going to draft one of those 2 guys, but not both of them without the trade. The question becomes, what point or what has to happen to justify all those picks that you could possibly have had to justify this trade to take Olave?
The last 2 seasons.
Well, to me, I think now I totally agree with you, Bob. There was a run on wide receiver that was coming, and that's why the Lions traded up. That's why you saw the Eagles trade back up. You saw Green Bay. They had 2 first-round picks. They were more than willing to trade up, sacrifice both of them to get one of those top receivers, and they didn't get it. You saw the Cardinals. The Titans trade away A.J. Brown to take Trevon Burks because they wanted a cheap receiver. So that was the run. So you weren't going to get Olave by staying still.
No.
Ravens too.
Yeah.
Ravens too.
Yeah. The Ravens traded Hollywood Brown. And, that's kind of the unspoken part of this deal is that by these teams trading away veteran receivers in order to get rookie receivers, the market of this past free agency has taught you that you're going to pay a lot of money for a veteran receiver. So your best bet is to get a rookie receiver, get that cheap 5-year deal, and then move on, So
and I believe that Olave, it's hard to say which one is which, but Olave was to me, from what I've seen, is probably one of the 2 best receivers that were in this class. And that's what you need. And the longer that you wait, you get what you pay for. If you wait till the 5th best is on the board and that's what you take, you're getting the 5th best.
Yeah.
The Saints needed one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And you got somebody that already has a relationship established with Michael Thomas. You don't have to worry about feathers being ruffled in that respect or anything like that.
And I agree with you. I'm not discounting the importance of taking Olave, and that was the guy they targeted. They were going to have to trade up to get him. It's just it's when they put it out and they lay it out on all the picks that you gave up essentially to get an extra first-round pick and to move up, it looks like a Ricky Williams type of trade. And it's not, because you still kept your number 19 pick and you still kept the 49th pick. So you get 3 picks in the first 50 players. It just hurt me on day 2 and 3 when I'm looking in the 3rd and 4th round, especially the 4th round, and all the good players were coming off the board that I wanted. You had a lot of talent that was right there at the beginning of the 4th round, and that's what hurt me. And it's why you ended up signing 17 free agents, because you missed out on some of those other guys, but you did get some quality players at the end of this draft, and we'll talk about those guys too in a minute.
You did, and I agree with you, Alan. It stung because 3 of my favorite backs in the draft were Pierre Strong, Damian Pierce from Florida, Zamir White from Georgia, and they would have all been on the board at the Saints pick in the 4th round at number 120, let alone in the 3rd round. If you're targeting tight ends, Greg Dolchik from UCLA, Jelani Woods from Virginia, Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State, all went in the 3rd round. Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler, Cade Cotton, Chig Aquanru from Maryland. They all went in the 4th round. So, like I said, the depth of this draft is what enticed me the most. And the Saints basically did wave a white flag at that depth. But listen, I mean, it's impossible to purely grade who won the trade, whether the Saints won this trade or not,
right?
For at least a couple of years. For the Saints to come out smelling like a rose, though, either Olave or Penning have to make a couple of Pro Bowls, at least, and the other one, at the very least, has to be a solid starter. If those two things don't happen at minimum, then the Saints gave up too much. But the elephant in the room too. First of all, critics of the trade are pointing out, like you said, Alan, laying out all the compensation, but they don't throw Trevor Penning in there. The Saints wouldn't have had enough picks to make the trade up for Olave in the first place if they wouldn't have made the trade for the Eagles to pick up the pick to get Penning. So you have to include him when you lay all this out. And secondly, I think the Saints probably realistically believe that Sean Payton will coach again, if not in 2023, then in 2024. And when that happens, New Orleans will get at least a first-round pick back in return.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about Penning in a minute, but to me, the trade for Olave had to happen because if they don't make the trade, we saw exactly what was going to happen in the second round. Their guy was falling right to them, and then immediately pick 48. There he goes, the safety. And, so that tells you, and the reason why they didn't move up is because they were out of ammo.
Right.
So that just tells you that, this draft, a lot of teams knew about the depth in the middle of the draft. The Baltimore Ravens, I think, had 4 picks in the 4th round. There was one of the team that had like a half dozen picks. Yeah, I think the Vikings had a ton of picks in the 7th round.
Yeah.
There was a lot of teams that had multiple picks in the middle of the draft. And I think that's where the draft was won or lost, really. I think the Saints got 2 great first rounders. I think they got a very good second rounder, although a surprise. And I think, in the 6th and 7th, the 5th and 6th round, the 5th round pick was kind of a head scratcher, but it makes sense from the standpoint of special teams kind of guy. A guy who probably gives you more flexibility than, say, a Zach Bond.
Oh, yeah.
And the 6th round pick is really an interesting guy. I want to see how he develops because that could be another Onyemata, Akeem Hicks kind of player that you got in the 6th round because he's in the Air Force. And teams kind of stay away from military guys because they have to serve. And in this case, Jackson's got a deferment, so he doesn't have to serve.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how he pans out.
And as far as the 5th round pick, Demarco Jackson from Appalachian State, I had him maybe even sneaking in as a late day 2 pick, but certainly through the 4th round. And I liked his game. I didn't have time to write up a draft profile article on him, but he was one of the linebackers, one of the handful of linebackers that I did watch film on, because again, I expected him to go in those middle rounds. That man has Saints linebacker written all over him. I think Saints fans that aren't familiar with him, Demarco Jackson from Appalachian State, they're going to fall in love with him in training camp. If he shows the traits that I saw on film. I mean, the man is a heat-seeking missile. Sideline to sideline pursuit. Little inexperienced in man coverage, but great awareness in zone, and he has the athleticism to take on tight ends and backs in coverage. Even though you don't want to see a guy his size take on a blocker, he's certainly willing to do it and stick his hat in there.
Well, I got to see him a lot because UL plays Appalachian State all the time. They play him twice a year, and they've always.
Did you see all the things that I said?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was a thorn on our side. I mean, and that school's a thorn on our side, but yeah, he's a guy that creates a lot of havoc. Very intelligent player. That's the thing that stands out to me. He knew what you were running before you ran the play. And he got himself in position. And when he saw it opening up, he attacked it immediately. Clearly the NFL is going to be a learning curve for him. But somebody tweeted this out, and it's actually really accurate for the Saints. Were you a team captain? Do you have a high motor? Do you show good leadership skills? If so, the Saints want to draft. You have a high athletic score, RAS score, relative athletic score. The Saints want to draft you, and
Yep. Team
I think,
captain.
yeah, I think this draft definitely shows that team captain, leader, and high athletic score. Those are the only guys they're looking at. So if you're looking in a draft book trying to guess who the Saints are going to look at, those are the things you need to look at. Guys that don't that aren't leaders, that have a low athletic score, Saints aren't even going to bother with them. Character issues, they're not going to bother with them. That's just not the kind of player they're interested in. So it explains a lot. It's a very Sean Payton type of draft that we saw. But real quick, I want to back up a little bit before we talk about the other Jackson. I want to talk about Trevor Penning. I mean, we've talked about him a few times on this show. Sean, you've seen now in the draft Trevor Penning on that footage. What was the first thing that popped in your mind when you were watching him?
Kyle Turley 2.0.
Yeah. I mean, they get you excited.
If I had to choose somebody to compare him to, that immediately leapt to mind.
Yeah. I mean, what did you think as you're watching him play? I mean, did you like what you saw?
I did. There's only one hesitation that I have is Northern Iowa, right?
Yes.
I want to see him face off against some stronger competition than the schools that he played against there. I'm not saying that he can't handle that transition, because I saw absolutely nothing in any of the footage that I saw of him to say that he wouldn't translate well.
I mean, you think about Jari Evans came from Bloomberg University. You had Zach Street from Northwestern. You had Bushrod, Jerome Bushrod. Yeah, Willie Rowe from Louisiana Tech. But Jerome Bushrod from Townsend, really small schools.
Even
Tyrann Armstead.
Yeah, even Armstead was HBCU.
Yeah, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Yeah. The thing what I really liked about the footage of Penning, sorry. I knew I was going to say Pennington at least once. No, we didn't draft Chad Pennington. The thing I really liked about Penning was his just that, like Calvin said, the nasty demeanor. Just go out there and just abuse the guy across from you, throw him to the ground, and then he is an athletic freak. He is just like Armstead was. He's fast. He's strong. Just a very just a football player. And people worried that he's going to draw a lot of penalties. He's going to draw a lot of attention to the team, going to get holding calls and things like that. I don't know if he's going to do that so much, as he is just going to have this attitude about him.
In the position that he plays, it's kind of necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, I'm really looking forward to it. And there's going to be a fight, at least one fight in training camp.
Early.
And it's going to be him. How when Brady Smith was part of the Saints, there was always going to be a fight in training camp. And 9 times out of 10, it was involving Brady Smith, which somebody on the team was going to fight him, and that's just that kind of guy. Between the trash talkers on defense and Penning on offense, yeah, we're going to have a fight, and it's going to be fun, Yeah, my son says money's on Penning versus Turner. Possibly. I'm thinking on Yamada. That's one,
Shy Tiger's been known to get into scraps.
Yeah, I don't think CD Deuce is going to go pick a fight with him. I'm curious what's going to happen here. Yeah, we got the trash talkers in the house. You got CD, Tyrann Mathieu, and Smoke Monday. I'll tell you what. I was really happy that we signed Smoke Monday. And then he tops it off with not only does he have a Saints Drew Brees jersey on the day he accepts the phone call that I'm coming to sign with the Saints, he goes out and drives on is that what is that 410? What's the loop in Atlanta? Is it 410? I don't remember what the loop is.
Can't remember.
Calvin will probably remember. He goes and drives by the Georgia Stadium and says on the video and tweets it out there, yeah, you have to see me twice a year now, guys. Get ready, strap it up. I mean, yeah, thank you, 285. Thank you, 285. But yeah, go out of your way to go talk shit to the Falcons. We don't even know if you're going to make the team, but you know what? You're going to make the team because you're talking shit about the Falcons. He gets it. And for that reason, I'm really going to enjoy this. I'm looking forward to him in preseason, watching him play. But we'll talk some more about the undrafted guys in a little bit. But I wanted to get also y'all's opinion about the second round pick, because the second round pick was kind of a surprise. As I said, they lost out on the safety from Baylor right in front of them. So this pick, I really thought that it was taking so long for the name to come out. I thought they were going to trade down and try and pick up a third. I think they did try and trade down. It just didn't happen. But what was your initial opinion of that pick, Sean?
Well, like you said, it was kind of a surprise. I didn't really see cornerback as a position of need. But at that point in the draft, you just kind of got to take what's handed to you. Take your version of best player available.
Yeah. Bob, how about you?
I had to laugh, and I made our staff laugh too, because I wasn't able to do any show appearances on the second day because Lauren and I were at a friend's wedding. And I couldn't even break away to jump onto our live telecast because just like as the pick was announced, once we found out the pick, just a minute before it was announced, the best man was making his toast. So I'd have made a big old scene trying to get up and sneak out. But as I told them, I'm like, I did film study and notes on 85 different players. I'm like the miniature Mike Detillier.
Uh-huh.
I did profile articles on, I think, 62 of them that I included in articles in some way, shape, or form. This is a kid whose name I saw and just kept scrolling by.
Yeah.
And we're not talking like and I did the same thing with Jordan Jackson with Air Force, but that's different. That was a guy who was expected to go late or be an undrafted guy. Alontae Taylor was expected to be a day 3 pick at the earliest. So, leave it to the Saints to, overdraft in the view of experts and people like us. In other words, Alontae Taylor was the one head scratcher that they're determined to have every year. Having said that, I understand the need. You can never have too many cover cornerbacks. Like Sean said, they're set there right now. Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo make a fantastic duo. Bradley Roby could start for most teams. But Roby's headed into the last year of his contract. You do have C.D. Deuce, but he's really best suited for a slot guy. Alontae, I know a lot of people instantly said, oh, he's going to be a safety. They're going to move him to safety. If you look at his tape, and that's one of the things that I had to do in the subsequent days. He looks like an outside press corner. He's got the lanky build, the long arms. He has an aggressive, a physical press at the line of scrimmage, and the speed to run with anybody. It's his off the ball skills that need a little bit of work. So if he's going to transition to safety, he's got a lot of work to do. And the most important, he's one hell of a special teams gunner. Mm-hmm. So he adds a whole lot of special teams value. As a second round pick, he's going to make the team. I wouldn't expect to see him a lot, especially early in the season in defensive packages, but I could see him working his way in. It'll be interesting to see how his physical traits transition to the Saints defense. Once I saw film on the kid, again, I could understand the decision making, and I sort of understood the athleticism behind the decision.
And they initially pitched that he's a corner safety hybrid, and that was one of the things I didn't include in the thing. The Saints, if they're looking for you as a draft pick, the Saints definitely like secondary players who can play multiple positions.
Oh yeah,
You can play cover corner, are big enough to play the big nickel or third linebacker position. Can move all over the place. They can play outside. They can play inside. That's the kind of guy that the Saints really like to have. And even bringing Tyrann Mathieu into the picture, you've got guys that can play multiple positions on the field. Yeah, they see May, for example, as being a strong safety, a safety in the box, but he can play the single high safety.
Mm-hmm.
They can move PJ Williams there. They can slide CD Deuce there. They can move. Now you have Jackson there. You have Jackson coming there as a safety linebacker hybrid. You can go to a true nickel, and now you have Bradley Roby out there. You can start moving all kinds of pieces, giving all kinds of coverage and all kinds of looks that confuse a quarterback, especially an inexperienced quarterback. That they think they see one thing, but the guy's playing a different position. So, it's really, it made sense to me after I got over the shock of that's who they took, because honestly, I was thinking the whole time, oh, this is going to be Hall from Iowa State. They're going to take a running back in the second round because it took your safety. So if you can't trade down, you're going to take Hall right here. I thought 49 was too high even for Trey McBride. Just because I think the tight end group is so weak. That's where I think losing a third or fourth round really hurt us. But when they took the corner, it took me a while to really process it. I liked the footage I saw. I liked his physicality that I saw in the tape. But figuring out where he fits on this defense is going to be an interesting thing to see. And then my son threw up there, what about the secondary apocalypse, injury apocalypse? It seems to happen every so often.
Sure.
We get scared so often that we're like one injury away from PJ Williams on one corner and what's his name? The undrafted free agent from 2017 who was playing who was number 25 this past year. What is his name?
Oh, Crawley.
Yeah, Crawley on the other side.
Bless.
Yeah, I know. We're terrified.
I'm having an aneurysm.
Right. We're terrified of
going out and finding BW Webb.
Yeah. I'm terrified of that injury bug.
Who said that?
Those guys. Oh, Chad, Sean's cousin, PJ.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just you have a much better safety coach. Like Brian's right. Brian Russell's right. You got a much better coach in Chris Richard. You've got good defensive minds that you're going to be able to shift people around. Mm-hmm. I was kind of upset they didn't take a defensive tackle early enough, in my opinion. I liked the Jackson pick from Air Force, but I kind of was looking at Matthew Butler in the fifth, thinking that he was going to be the pick in the fifth. But somebody pointed out the other day that the Saints have a lot of depth at tackle. They've got a lot of run stuffers, but not a lot of pass rushers at tackle. But because you've got the first round pick from last year, Peyton Turner, who can play inside and outside, you kind of can go back to the NASCAR package and put four pass rushers out there. So like the secondary, I think the defensive line is one of those things where you kind of have to get out of your mindset of, a number in a 3 technique, a 0 technique, and 2 pass rushing defensive ends, because that's
Yeah.
not necessarily what the Saints are going to do. They have figured out a way to change the defense up that you can kind of make up for those weaknesses or those lack of those true players. So
Well, and you mentioned Peyton Turner, they're working inside and outside, and we see, before Turner went down in, what was it, week 3 or 4, for the year, we did see Turner, rushing some from the inside on obvious passing downs, and after that, after Peyton went down, we saw Dennis Allen start to use Passanio in that role.
Yes.
Where later in the season, after KP got hurt, later in the season, we saw Davenport rushing from the inside, and him keeping Cam and Granderson on the edge. So certainly there's a lot of flexibility there. And not only that, you mentioned the run stuffers there, outside of Onyemata. You have Shai Tuttle too.
Mhm.
They really, really like Kentavious Street, the free agent that they signed from the 49ers. And I think Street is going to play a big role in this defense. He's not a Pro Bowl pass rusher. He's not a Pro Bowl defensive tackle, period. But I think we're going to see a lot of good snaps from him. And yeah, you're right. I think they felt very comfortable, with the early down interior depth that they had there. Knowing that they could move Turner, Davenport, Passanio, any of the above, inside, while still maintaining a lot of disruption at both edges.
Yeah, the thing about, I forget about Street too, but here's the thing about this defense. It's not the no-name defense. That's only the Miami Dolphins of 72 and 73. But they have figured out a way to use enough wave players, and that's an old term, but players who are just rotational guys, that you become a better defense as a unit than you are with individual players. That being said, clearly Davenport makes his defense better. Demario Davis makes his defense better. Having guys you can play out on the islands like a Debo and Lattimore make this defense better. But at the same time, you have enough pieces you can maneuver around to make the unit that much better.
Yeah.
So it really intrigues me, the things that Allen can do with this defense to make it good. Now that
and I think John said something a minute ago too, about Taylor. Yeah, Taylor has the size and the length and the physicality that Chris Richard likes in his defensive backs. I mean, we saw it all the way back to the Seahawks defense that Richard ran. And Alontae Taylor has that kind of ability. You hate to compare a rookie to anybody before they ever take the field, but he does kind of have a Richard Sherman feel to him. He's a bigger guy, not quite as big as Sherman, but bigger guy that can run with receivers, but can also beat them up at the line of scrimmage.
Now, I'm going to ask Sean this question here, but I'm going to ask you as well, Bob. Sean, Quan Alexander, he took a visit to the Jets, did not sign with the Jets. Do you think Quan Alexander comes back to this defense?
I hope he does. This defense is better when Quan and Davis are together by leaps and bounds. I think that we need him to come back. I just don't know if we're going to be willing, especially now that we've got that big deal on Mathieu, if we're going to be able to compensate him the way that he wants to be compensated.
Same question for you, Bob. Do you think Quan comes back?
Yeah, I think, and like Sean, I certainly hope he does. But yeah, I think he does. I'll put it this way: if Quan was going anywhere else, I think it would have happened already Monday or Tuesday. At this point, I have a gut feeling, that the Saints are just trying to work out the contract details with him. Tyrann Mathieu was their first priority. They felt they had to get that deal done first. to see what kind of finances they were left with. And we don't know what kind of deal that Quan is asking for. If he does come back to New Orleans or lands anywhere, it'll probably be on a 1-year deal or a 2-year contract with a 1-year void built into it. But yeah, and I like Pete Werner a lot. I think he's a good football player. I think he can be a fine football player. But Quan makes this defense so much more athletic, so much more dynamic. Alexander, in my opinion, played the best football he's ever played last year.
Absolutely.
When he came back from his usual injury that's going to keep him sidelined for a few weeks. And you know, the lack of depth at that linebacker position, guys, still scares me. Behind Quan. I like Demarco Jackson a lot, like I mentioned earlier. Caden Ellis is a good run defender on early downs, but as far as any down and every down situation, Werner and Demario are the only two guys you got.
That's where I was going with this. I feel they're going to re-sign Quan because they did not take a linebacker in this draft until you got to Jackson, and Jackson he's more of a challenge to Zach Bond than he is Pete Werner or Demario Davis.
You don't draft. Sorry to interrupt. You don't draft a guy in the 5th round expecting he's going to step in for a Quan out. You just don't. You take him for value in special teams and developmental traits.
Exactly. So you only really have the 2 starters right now, Werner and Davis. So you need a Quan Alexander back. And I agree. I think he comes back on a 1-year deal, mainly because not that the Saints don't like him and not that the Saints don't have faith in him, but I think they look at him as a declining player that any day now the bottom's just going to fall out. And I'm thinking of a guy like Craig Robertson. Craig Robertson is a good example of somebody who, he had Quan's more athletic than Robertson, but Robertson had this level of play. He was going to give you everything he had. And then once he started to slip athletically, it wasn't enough. He was just a hard driving player. But those last couple of years where you saw him out there playing for any length of time, you started seeing him get exposed. And I think that's how they kind of see Quan Alexander, is that he's good right now and, he can play really, really well. But how many snaps can we get out of this guy for a season? If we can get 17 games out of him, that'll be a great thing. So that's the kind of contract I think he will sign. I don't know, they have a comment here. Brian says he'd like to see Bond rushing the pass on a regular basis. The problem with Bond is this defense is not his kind of defense for him to re-rush the passer. This is a defense built on size. We went through the heights of these guys. Cam Jordan made a joke. He's the shortest guy out there. He's looking at Peyton Turner. I think Peyton Turner is like 6'6", 6'7", something like that. Marcus Davenport's a big guy, and they have these really long arms. And here's traditional defensive end size. Cam Jordan is 6'4", and he feels short next to these guys.
He's 6'4" and only 280.
Right. So, that's the issue I have with Bond. I think Bond would have done really well in the 2013 Saints defense, rushing the passer when they were trying to go to more of a 3-4 kind of scheme, or it's a 4-3, 3-4 hybrid. Where basically you have four down linemen. Then when they go to the NASCAR package, you have a linebacker coming off the edge as almost like a 5th pass rusher. So I don't know how much trade value he's going to have. I think the first attempt was, let's try and make him a 3-down, 3-4, 43 linebacker, weak side linebacker or strong side linebacker. It didn't happen. So now he's a special teamer. I don't know how much value he'll have as a trade. So that's the challenge you have. And Bond and Jackson are almost the same guy, except Jackson's more of an inside backer than Bond is. Jackson's got much more size to him.
Yeah, and Jackson is a linebacker. People forget that Zach Bond was a stand-up defensive end at Wisconsin. He very, very rarely dropped back into coverage. His mission was to rush the quarterback and get and disrupt the backfield. He just wasn't asked to do linebacker responsibilities. So while you might look at a Zach Bond and a Demarco Jackson side by side, they look like similar players. In their physical makeup and maybe even their athleticism. But Demarco Jackson is a linebacker. Zach Bond is not.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you have to be uber talented, like a cocaine-ridden Lawrence Taylor, if you're going to strictly be a pass rusher and you don't want to do anything else as a linebacker.
Not that we're suggesting that.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Lawrence Taylor would have told you. He told you flat out, I forget my responsibilities. So if I forgot my responsibilities, I was just going to rush the passer.
Yeah.
Because I forgot what I was supposed to do. And, this first couple of years, they're yelling at him, you're supposed to drop off in coverage. You're supposed to go and do this. And he's like, well, coach, I sacked the quarterback. It's fourth down. They're punting. He's like, yeah, well, I guess I can't argue with that. You did do it.
When you look at this roster coming out of the draft now, they signed Mathieu. The LSU warmongers have their guy. Are there any positions or spots that have you biting your fingernails?
Right off the top of my head, no. Nothing that's just a glaring concern. I think my concerns are more in terms of depth, because the past several seasons we've seen we have the team to put on the field to win. One injury happens and everything falls apart. I would like to see us get beyond that.
Well, that leads us into a good segue into the undrafted.
I'm good to get you where you're going, brother.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Because it's like
we're simpatico. I'm concerned about running back because I'm expecting that Alvin Kamara suspension. We didn't draft a running back. Now, we did sign as an undrafted free agent the Baylor running back.
Abram Smith, yeah.
Thank you.
That is a moderate concern for me. I'm not ready to jump off the top of the building over it yet, but I am concerned if that all plays out the way that we all expect it to.
Well, and that's going to be my next comment. Talking about players that are still out there. The LSU mob wants us to sign Jarvis Landry as well, and there's talk out there, and I shared it just a second ago. Brian Russell mentioned Sony Michel. Sony Michel, he's only 27 years old. He has 37-year-old knees, though. Not quite as bad as his fellow Georgia teammate, the former Ram. Gurley, thank you. Chubb kept coming to mind, and it's not Chubb. I knew better. But what do you think about signing a guy like Sony Michel?
I'd love it.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, when Brendan Boylan and I were talking on our first night one telecast, he kept bringing up Sony Michel, and then he was bringing it up again as we were capping up day 3. I'm disappointed that the Saints didn't or couldn't make a run for any of the top backs early on in free agency. The Marlon Macks, Melvin Gordons, there were one or two other ones. Sony Michel fits that kind of role, though. He's the kind of guy. He has shown that he can carry the load, but he's also shown the willingness to share carries in the backfield. And that would obviously be key, because when you have a non-suspended, healthy Alvin Kamara on the roster, he's going to be the focal point of your offense. So you have to have a guy that's willing to take a back seat. Sony Michel is that kind of guy. Philip Lindsay and Jordan Howard are two other guys that are still hanging out there on the free agent market. I saw the name at the bottom of the screen. The Atlanta Falcons just released Mike Davis today.
Yeah.
And Brian Gordon re-signed with Denver anyway, so that's a moot point. I would like to see the Saints kick the tires on one of those guys. Listen, I broke down the tape of Abram Smith after they signed him, and I'll be covering the undrafted free agents and articles, in the latter portion of the week. And I think this kid's a good-looking running back. But again, just like with Demarco Jackson, you don't want to go into the season counting on the rapid development of an undrafted guy, especially if Alvin Kamara gets suspended. So that's why I'd like to see them kick the tires on one of these veterans and at least bring them in for a look.
Yeah, I like the idea of bringing them in for a look. I like the idea of these guys. I know I agree with you, Calvin. I like the idea of young legs, over old veterans and things like that. But my thing is, let's assume that Alvin Kamara does get suspended. It's tough to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to trust my running game on Mark Ingram and let Abram, or another Tony Jones or someone like that. I worry about that because I think that's the problem we had back in, what was it, 2019, when Ingram was suspended for the first 6 games or 4 games. 2018. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we tried different running backs to pick up where Ingram could fill in, and it turned out every single one of them, they couldn't even make the cut. I mean, they honestly, that kid from New England couldn't even get to the outside. He was getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage every time. So I think I'd like to see, Sonny Michel could probably end up being another Devontae Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
A guy comes in training camp, puts the ball on the ground a few times, just doesn't show anything that really shows a kind of explosiveness, and you cut him. I just would feel more confident if we had at least a veteran in training camp to prove himself. And if he can't do it, he can't do it. Yeah, he is young. Sonny Michel is young, but his knees are old. So that's the question. It's never the years; it's the mileage.
On a running back, and that's why that's why he ended up in with the Rams from New England in the first place.
Yeah, and we just mentioned Lindsay, and I think Terry Colin. Did you mention him? I wasn't. I was listening, but I wasn't listening. I think
I didn't. I mentioned Jordan Howard. But
yeah,
Brendan
I remember Jordan Howard.
Cohen. Cohen's not an in between the tackles guy. So at that point, he feels, and Sean's shaking his head too, because he knows. I think Sean and I have talked at length about Cohen in the past. Cohen would fill the role that Alvin Kamara would while Kamara is suspended. But once Kamara is back, Cohen has zero role on this team. So you're falling back to only Mark Ingram between the tackle situations.
And Murray, my problem with Murray is he's old. I mean, he looked bad last year when he was with us. And he did some things with Baltimore. I'll give you that, but I just don't see. You've got a Murray like back with Ingram right now.
Right.
You need somebody who can take 10 to 15 snaps running the football and actually get positive yardage consistently. At this point, I would take. What was his name from the Cowboys? He was with Calvin Hill and Dwayne Thomas. He was the fullback. Not Newhouse. This is before Newhouse. This is early Dallas. This is the Cowboy, the real Western guy. Walt Garrison. Walt Garrison is the one I'm thinking of. Walt Garrison said of himself.
Did the skull commercials. Walt Garrison said,
if you need 3 yards, I'm going to get you 3 yards. You need 10 yards, I'm going to get you 3 yards. That's we need that kind of back right now. Get me 3 yards. That's all I'm looking for right now. So, and that's the funny thing. So I need somebody who's going to get those tough yards inside because you're going to use Taysom Hill probably a lot in short yardage as well,
Right.
kind of balance it out. Despite what the news says, Taysom Hill will take snaps at quarterback running those RPO plays. He's not going to be strictly a tight end. It's designed running plays with occasional passes if that play is open and it's a quick hitter, like a pass out in the flat, a quick slant, something like that, just so the RPO works, you know. But yeah, you've got that's one position I feel nervous about. Tight end, I'm still feel a little nervous about, only because you've got Taysom Hill, you've got Adam Trotman, and I don't even know who else is on the team. There's four of them. I don't know who the other two are.
Nick Vannett and Juwan Johnson.
Oh yeah, Juwan Johnson. Okay, Juwan Johnson. All right. So that brings us to the undrafted guys. I mean, because there's nothing out there in free agency unless you want to go back and do the reclamation project on Ebron, the former Lion and Steeler, or you want to bring back the painful memories of Jared Cook. There's really nothing out there.
Let's not do that.
You're right. So in 1983, there was a terrible movie that came out. I got free tickets to go see it. It's only known for two things. Number one, a video game came out with it, and I think the video game was much more popular than the movie.
Oh yeah,
but it was also Liam Nielsen's first film. And now we have a tight end from Pittsburgh called Lucas Krull. So yeah, I saw the movie Krull for free. I also saw the movie Your for free. And my joke at that time was it was a waste of your time, a waste of your money. You know, it was a bad film. So, but Lucas Krull is an interesting prospect. What do you know about Lucas Krull, Sean? No, Bob, I'm sorry.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I know you know nothing, Sean. You're Sergeant Schultz when it comes to these guys. I know nothing. I see nothing. So, you know.
Hey, listen, Lucas Krull looks the part. I mean, he's a 6'6", 260-pound beast. But you guys saw the movie Draft Day.
Yes.
So I'll borrow a saying from that. Looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane.
Yes.
Lucas Krull looks the part, but he can't block. He just can't. And the reason he can't is because he won't. He's not a physical player at all. He'll give you an Olay at the line of scrimmage and get Jameis Winston or Alvin Kamara killed, literally. He's a transfer from Florida. So he's used to big time football. He's second team all ACC last year in his 1 year for Pitt. For his size, he's got good speed and actually a solid change of direction if you're looking for a pass receiving tight end. Pretty good route runner. As far as making adjustments, zone recognitions, etc. But again, he has the frame to improve. He has the frame to be a monster blocker, but refuses to show the physicality. That's one of the reasons why he did transfer from Florida, because even after Kyle Pitts declared for the draft, Lucas wasn't going to get any playing time with the Gators. So he transferred to Pitt, where they were devoid of talent. Other than a couple of areas. I'm sorry, Pitt Panther fans. You're going to suck again this year. The Penn State graduate says with a smile on his face. Lucas Krull looks the part, but he got to show you a lot to beat out Troutman or Troutman or even Vannett or Johnson. I'll leave it at that. As a pass catcher, if you just click on his highlights, you sit there and say, "Oh, this guy can play." Watch the entire game. This guy, he can play, but he won't.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned Pitt Panthers. I'm thinking there's two players in Pitt Panther history I can think of that always come to mind: Tony Dorsett and Dan Marino. Right. You know, and Tony Dorsett was the year they won a national championship. because that was a huge deal. They won the national championship, I think, in the Sugar Bowl, in fact.
Yes. Against Georgia.
And then in 1977, they win the Super Bowl in 78, but the 77 season. They win the Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys again in the Superdome. So, it was the first player to win a national championship in the Super Bowl in roughly the same year, because 76 you played on New Year's Day, 77, you 77 season you play in January of 78 in the Dome.
And Pitt has certainly produced some fine football players over the years. Our own Ricky Jackson being one of them.
Yes.
We could run down the list. Lucas Krull will not go down in infamy as one of those Pitt players. I'm sorry, he won't.
Well, it's funny because Pittsburgh, the Steelers, took Kenny Pickett in the first round, which they had to. I mean, you had to. It's just like I have a friend who is a Lions fan who works with me, and I have to capture him because he's a unicorn. Because he's a guy who's proud to say he's a Lions fan. He wears the Lions hat and stuff like that to work, and I'm like, dude, that you're a rare beast. But he's also a Michigan fan. So when the Detroit Lions were able to draft that defensive tackle from Michigan, I said, man, that's like Saints fans getting Joe Burrow in the draft. I mean, and he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "My son was going crazy when Jacksonville took the Georgia defensive lineman instead of him. It's just like this was it. This is what we wanted. This was our Super Bowl. So, same.
Well, they better enjoy it because it's the only damn Super Bowl they're going to get.
Right.
So Pittsburgh taking Pickett. I can't help but go back to 1983 and them not taking Dan Marino in Terry Bradshaw's last year, how that changed the course of the franchise. And Chuck Noll's gone on record many, many times explaining why he didn't do it. He was going back and redrafting Mean Joe Green. He took a defensive lineman who unfortunately was injured. I think he was killed, either paralyzed or killed. I think he was paralyzed in his rookie year in that auto accident.
And also, in Noll's defense, nobody knew that Bradshaw was going into his last year. He had hurt his elbow in training camp. They were waiting for him to recover, and the reconstructive elbow surgery in 1983. That was a death sentence. But Rooney Sr. never forgave anybody in his family for passing on Dan Marino.
Right, because here he is playing in your backyard. He's falling to you in the draft because of unsubstantiated rumors about drugs. Imagine what would have happened if Pittsburgh gets Dan Marino and you're playing for Chuck Noll. He can rebuild the steel curtain defense. You probably get a couple more Super Bowls in the 80s with a Dan Marino.
Without a doubt.
So, that's why when they took Pickett, and I'm not saying Pickett is even close to a Dan Marino, but, how much of that was hanging, really, but how much of that was hanging over Pittsburgh fans? You passed up Marino all those years ago. Don't pass up on this guy, How
surprised were y'all that the quarterbacks played out the way that they did? I'm not saying that it was justified or unjustified. It was shocking to me that there were, 2 quarterbacks taken in the first 3 rounds?
Just one.
One in the first, none in the second, and then Ritter went in the third, did he not?
Corral, Ritter, and Willis all came off the board in the third.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was. I was surprised only in the way that we and all 3 of us expected these quarterbacks to be overdrafted. So I was surprised that they weren't, other than Pickett. But like Alan said, Pittsburgh had no choice. The other teams that needed a quarterback, Atlanta, I'm convinced, is tanking for a top draft pick next year. Carolina, they have to at least play 500 ball now just to save Rule's job. Seattle is rebuilding. Detroit is rebuilding, and they have a guy in Goff that could be a caretaker. Pittsburgh has Mitchell Trubisky, which is the same as the New Orleans Saints saying, "Oh, we're going to go into 2022 with Trevor Siemian as our quarterback." Yeah. It's exactly the same. So the Steelers had no choice. Those other guys, and Alan and I both said many times we like Corral. Corral shouldn't have been a day one pick. Ritter shouldn't have been a day one pick. Willis shouldn't have been a day one pick. So it was nice to see that they went about where they should have. But I am surprised, Sean, because so many people overdraft quarterbacks.
Yeah, we see that every year. A prime example is Mitchell Trubisky himself.
Yeah. Exactly.
I thought Corral and Ritter were second round picks. I really did. I had those guys rated as second round picks. I thought Willis was really overhyped. I thought his workout tapes elevated his draft stock so much that people forgot how ready is he to be a football player. He is so raw, and if he went to the wrong team, he was just going to be a guy who was going to be a pinata back there and injure his knee and be out of football in 3 years. If he went to he went to a Jacksonville, for example, even though Jacksonville's got a quarterback, or Atlanta. Yeah, he goes to Atlanta with no offensive line. That kind of team. Him going to Tennessee, he's got a good shot at developing and becoming the kind of quarterback. Calvin. Corral should have been undrafted. The thing that surprised me was the story. Well, here you go, Calvin. Get ready to tell this story right now. The story was that Carolina was working on doing a deal to get Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. They were trying to do the trade, but they were trying to get Cleveland to eat that contract. Yeah. And Cleveland wasn't doing it. So Cleveland stuck with him. And, now that the Steelers have Pickett, I wonder if the Browns, if they cannot trade him, if quarterback, they're probably going to hold on to him just to see if quarterbacks start getting injured, in training camp and whatever. But, I
disagree with that move. You don't want Baker in there.
But they won't have him in the building. So, yeah, I think it's a dumb move. It's typical Browns, but I think that's what will end up happening.
But you screwed yourself already. You should have made the trade for Mayfield before you signed Watson.
Yep.
You can have the deal in place with Watson, but you got to have a backdoor channel and making that trade with Mayfield, and you have to be willing to eat some of that contract.
Oh yeah, you have to. Even if you get pennies on the dollar and you have to eat most of the contract, you still get something, and you don't have to eat all the contract.
Yeah. Yes, you have to, because you need to get him out of the building and get something for him. Right now, if you don't get the trade, you're going to end up cutting him. You're eating the contract anyway. You can't afford to keep him around on the roster, like you said. You can't have him in the building. Now, is there a possibility that Watson gets suspended a few games? Maybe. Don't know. He hasn't. Every time they impanel a grand jury, the grand jury comes back with no bill.
Right.
That doesn't mean he didn't commit these crimes. It doesn't mean the events didn't happen the way the accusers are saying. It's one of those things where I think he's confident enough that there is no evidence to show it was anything but consensual. So the Browns are stuck now. And the reason why they didn't cut Baker before is because they knew the Steelers would grab him that within 24 hours, actually after 24 hours, once you could pick him up for $100, he clears waivers, they would take him. But they now they've got Pickett, they may not get him. So I just don't know what the Browns are going to do with this. And I think that's why the Panthers ended up drafting Matt Corral, because they've got to take a quarterback, because they know Sam Darnold's not going to be the starter for 17 games. Rule is probably not going to coach 17 games this year. So it's a mess. A lot of people were commenting on stuff. Yes, Willis was overhyped, and Thibodeau was the heel. I think the draft showed that with the people, and I was watching ESPN. The draft showed what the talking heads say about a guy is never how the front office really sees him.
No.
And I think that was the issue. He doesn't like that. Ryan Tannehill just flat out pulled a Joe Montana, Brett Favre kind of thing. I'm not helping him. I'm not helping this guy take my job. So that's always entertaining to see. So I don't know if Baker's going to get cut. I think they're going to try one more time during preseason, see the injuries happen, and see if they can trade into somebody who loses their starter. It's insane, but they may do that. Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not trading him because I think they really don't think that Trey Lance is ready either.
Yeah.
He's in his last year of his deal. So, it is crazy what's going on with these quarterbacks. It's crazy with all of these wide receivers. It's I don't know what other than what I said in the beginning of the show. You're not going to pay now. Michael Thomas's contract looks like a nice deal.
Yeah.
Compared to these other guys, you either
Christian Kirk ruined it for everybody.
Well, that's just it. You're either going to overpay these guys, or you're going to trade them away, let some other team overpay them, and you're just going to go in the draft and go get somebody.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, so the 17 undrafted free agents. There's a couple of names I wanted to bring up. There's a couple of tryout guys, and one of them is a familiar name for some people. Bruce Jordan Swilling. This is Pat Swilling's adopted son, not his biological son. His biological son was a basketball player, but Bruce Jordan Swilling he's also a better athlete, but he's a running back. So that's a name to watch. He's just going for a tryout to the rookie camp. He hasn't been signed yet. New Orleans native C.J. Holmes, he's a safety from Jackson State. He's a guy coming in for a tryout. They did the HBCU Bowl in New Orleans to try and get more exposure to some of these players. And I think 2 or 3 of them actually got drafted this year. And you see a guy like C.J. Holmes now coming in as a tryout. I think that bowl kind of helped these guys get that exposure. I'm going to horribly mispronounce this guy's name because it's Dejon Dixon, wide receiver from Nicholls State.
Mm-hmm.
He's a local kid. That's somebody to watch. We talked about Smoke Monday already, and Abram Smith. Is there a guy that you're looking at, Bob, in these 17 guys that they're going to bring in that is somebody that, hey, this might be a guy who can actually make this final roster?
We already talked about Smoke Monday in the secondary. There are 2 cornerbacks. One Demarcus Fields from Texas Tech, and the other Vincent Gray from Michigan. Both of them are listed at cornerback. But Fields in particular, Fields is a real athletic guy, but he's not. He's a real athletic guy, but his strongest suit is not man-to-man coverage. It's off-ball coverage. So he'd need to bulk up. He's 6 foot 193, so he'd need to bulk up for a move to safety. But it's certainly possible. Vincent Gray has absolutely zero ball skills, zero interceptions in 4 years at Michigan. And that's getting targeted often because he was opposite of Dax Hill. But Vincent Gray is a terrific run supporter. Again, off the ball guy. Neither Fields or Gray have the man-to-man skills that Dennis Allen and Chris Richard like to see. But again, if a guy sticks, it's going to be on special teams. We were talking about linebacker. Yeah, Brian Russell, good segue. We were talking about linebackers before. Neffy Sewell from Utah is a guy who I expected to be drafted on day 3. I was surprised that nobody grabbed him. He's a converted safety. Brother of Lions first-round pick last year, Penei Sewell, the offensive lineman. Yeah. We know how the Saints love NFL bloodline. But Neffy only runs about 5'11", 226. But he has excellent instincts and very, very good range in zones. When I watch this film, he flows like a linebacker towards the run, but you got to keep him in open space. So he's a weak side guy only. And again, like any of those undrafted guys, he's going to have to make his bones on special teams. But Neffy Sewell is a guy that I'm watching at linebacker too.
Well, Raid Shaheed, I hope I said his name right, from Weber State. That's a guy I'm interested in watching. He's a kick returner. He's very small, just like Hardy, Deontay Hardy. Almost said his old last name. But I think now that they're going to start kind of phasing Hardy into more of as a receiver, it'll be interesting to see how Shaheed does as a returner. If I remember the stats right, and this is just off of memory, he had over 5,000 yards, return yards, in his 3-year career at Weber State. He set that was a school record. He set a school record with 7 returns for touchdowns. He has 4.26 speed, something insane like that. I was just looking that up. Hang on here. I want to make sure I'm right about that.
It's unofficial, but I've heard 4.25. So yeah.
Yeah. So, you're looking at a guy who has a really good chance of making, and some of them did get guaranteed money. A lot of guaranteed money. Smoke Monday's one of them. Rashid Shaheed's another one. FCS record. You're right, Calvin. You're right. He set an FCS record for returns. So, So you're looking at guys who, not only, to me, those are the guys to watch in training camp and in preseason to see if they make this team. I think he has a good chance of making this team as a returner. And in kickoffs, you could put him on one side and Hardy on the other side. Who the hell are you going to kick it to? You're going to squib it every time? You're going to try and kick it out the end zone? Even if you better kick it out of the end zone, because even if you kick it in the end zone, one of those guys may take it out. So I'm really intrigued by those guys more than anything else. Unfortunately, we didn't get the guy from Clemson who I really, really wanted. He's got the neck injury he was recovering from. Jordan, I knew I was going to forget.
Wide receiver?
Yes. I thought we were going to bring him in. Let's see. He came out of Clemson. Justin Ross. I kept saying Jordan. He signed with the Chiefs. He had a neck injury. He came out his first couple of years and just looked like the best, looked better than T. Higgins, like one of the best receivers on the Clemson Tigers team. And then he started getting injured, and he had neck surgery, I believe, last year. And then this year, it was slow recovery. He looked really hesitant. He didn't like the same player that you had before. But I was really hoping we were going to take a shot on him to see if we could get something out of him. How about some of the offensive linemen that you that they brought in? What do you think of those guys? I mean, there's a lot of depth on this offensive line, so it's going to be a tough battle. But guys like Throckmorton has come back and make the team. Ethan Greenrich, they've made the team. What do you think of those guys?
I'll be honest, guys. I've had zero opportunity to research any undrafted linemen.
Okay.
And I won't lie, I really didn't bother for the reasons that you said. I mean, you look at the top five, the starting five are set. Really the starting six, because you have to include James Hurst in that. And then you look at Forrest Lamp, Greenridge, and Throckmorton. You're looking at your 8 or 9 linemen at that point. Brian, the name that did stick out to me is Eric Wilson from Penn State. At Penn State for the last couple of years has had an extremely athletic and technically sound line. That's one of the few ways I will give their trash coach James Franklin any credit whatsoever, is that they develop linemen and wide receivers and defensive backs. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what Eric Wilson will bring. And Alan, like you said, you look at Throckmorton, Greenidge, and other guys too. Will Clapp was a 7th round pick. These are undrafted guys that were able to make the team. So it wouldn't shock me if one of those offensive linemen made it. I just don't know anything about them, so I do apologize.
One of the questions they're asking is Young in the practice squad. No, Young was actually active, and he injured his foot in his one game he started, so he was put on IR.
Yeah, I forgot about Landon Young too.
Yeah, so that's what's so tough about these undrafted guys making this offensive line, because they've invested a lot of time. You've got Doug Marrone in there now. They're trying to turn this offensive line around. And the weakness right now, honestly, is Cesar Ruiz. I don't know. One of the things I'm interested about is, Clapp did sign with the Chargers. I did see that.
Yes.
But one of the things I'm interested to see, does Cesar Ruiz hold on to his job, or does a guy like Throckmorton replace him? You kind of don't want that to happen, because with Andres Pete, it's not a question of if he gets injured, it's when he gets injured. Hurst can play guard and tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see Penning beat him out and start week 1. That way Hurst is your 3rd tackle. And we were talking about the lack of blocking tight ends or quality tight ends. You can kind of use him in the short yardage situation, kind of like we did with Zach Strief for years before he became a starter. You get that, and you did this with Will Clapp too. So, there's some flexibility there, and that's the key with all these undrafted guys. How much flexibility can you show? Can you show you can play right and left guard? Can you play center guard? Those are the guys that can you play guard tackle? Those are the guys that, you can see sticking around versus some of the other guys they brought in. Yeah, you're right about that. So I think it's a make or break year for Ruiz personally.
Yep.
I think,
but that's what makes the pick of Trevor Penning all the more crucial to New Orleans. If Penning develops a little bit slowly, you do have a great fallback option in James Hurst. But you obviously hope that Penning is able to start sooner rather than later, because obviously you have a 1st-round draft pick investment. And secondly, if Ruiz struggles to begin the year, and Saints fans, make no mistake, Ruiz is going to start the year. He's a number 1 draft choice. Teams just don't give up that quickly on him. But if Ruiz struggles for the first half of the year, you do have James Hurst to fall back on. If Andres Pete gets injured, when Andres Pete gets injured, you have James Hurst to fall back on. If Pete gets hurt and Ruiz struggles, you have Hurst and Throckmorton. So there's a lot of flexibility that this Saints line has. I look for them, unless Penning is a bust. I look for this offensive line to be right back to its dominant form.
Well, Sean, I was going to ask you the question. Sean Payton's not around anymore. How many games into the season before you have Dennis Allen has the Sean Payton, Charles Brown moment of I've seen enough? The schedule comes out next week, but how much time do you think they give Ruiz before you have the I've seen enough moment from Dennis Allen? Do you have a guess?
Um, I'd say the over under would probably be 3 or 4 games.
I would say so. I'm curious when the
I
schedule comes out.
honestly, it depends on how fast Penning develops.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen of this guy, there's no guarantee that Ruiz will even be starting over Penning.
Well, the interesting well, no, Reeves won't start over Penning, but that if Penning can play left tackle from the get go, kind of like I mean, Willie Rowe started out right tackle, but he beat out Tootie Robbins within the first couple of weeks of training camp. Um, if Penning can come in and beat out Hurst within the first couple of weeks of training camp, so he's starting with the starting five, that's a good sign. I think the thing with Ruiz, you want to see Penning is playing well, Pete staying healthy, and if Ruiz is doing what he did last year, because I know they're going to run pretty much the same kind of offense when that guard has to pull and come around and seal the edge in this. It's like a trap play or a sweep. If you see Ruiz fall on his face one more time out there in the film, we all make fun of Pete, but Pete doesn't fall down. Pete's problem is he'll go from not even the same quarter, but series. He'll go from looking like an all pro, just demolishing a guy, getting to the second level to, oh, what was the snap on? Was it on 2 or 1? I forgot. And the guy just blew right past me because I'm still in my stance. It's one of those. That's the problem you have at Pete. But I never saw a guy, and this is going back to the 70s now. I've never seen a guy fall down as much as I've seen Ruiz fall down last year. It was horrible. Um, yeah, ironically, his ass is the biggest part of him too, Calvin. I mean, he's got a center's butt. I think that's his number one problem. I think he's truly just a center in not a zone blocking scheme. I think he's a center in a man-to-man blocking scheme. I think when he has to pull and move, that's when he gets in trouble.
Yep.
Almost want to send him up to Charles Bentley's camp for a while to get going. Last question of the night. Tyrann Mathieu. How excited are you at the idea of Tyrann Mathieu being on this team, Sean?
I'm actually very excited. Not from the standpoint that I think he's going to come in and just tremendously change this defense. I always love to see guys going home to finish their careers.
Bob, how about you?
I'm more excited that it happened now rather than happening before or instead of signing Marcus May. Because and I'll say it, May is the better of the two players for this defense, if you had to go with one of them. But I believe that once they work up communication with each other, and the rest of that secondary, and that's key, folks. That's going to take time.
Yeah.
Once that happens, I believe that Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu are certainly the more athletic duo than Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins, because I love Malcolm Jenkins as a person and what he meant to the Saints culture, but MJ was an absolute liability in coverage for the last 2 or 3 years, which was never a strong suit in the first place. Mathieu is certainly an upgrade there, and there is not that much of a drop-off between Marcus May and Marcus Williams. So in the long run, this secondary is going to be better because of this duo. But again, folks, it's going to take time. I was interested. I was worried that Honey Badger would just be asking for the moon and back.
He got a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years, $33 million on the surface is pretty big. But the fact that $18 million of it was guaranteed, therefore the Saints can roll that over into a signing bonus at any point in time and save on salary cap. Yeah. So it isn't a cap killing contract. It is just a lot of money. And frankly, I've seen a decline out of Mathieu in the last year and a half or two. So I'll be surprised if he plays the full 3 years. But I think for the first year or two, I think it's going to be a benefit to the Saints defense because he plays that rover role. In his prime, he played it better than a lot of people, which is what Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does best. So to have two of them roaming around the field, knowing that you could plug in May at either strong safety or as a deep safety, there's so much versatility and athleticism in this secondary now.
Well, and that's where I was going with this, because I think that Mathieu, even though he's only 30, is an aging player.
He's
that's part. Yeah. You're not getting the guy you got at LSU. You're not getting a guy in his prime. You're getting an aging player. But the good news is, because you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, because you now have Jackson, because you now have Marcus May, you've got a PJ Williams, you've got guys that they can rotate safeties now and rotate coverages. So it's going to make it even harder for offensive coordinators to figure out who to attack. Because there'll be matchup changes all the time. So I think, again, it's going to be more of a team unit to make you a better team. Clearly, Malcolm Jenkins was an aging player. Marcus Williams, he had issues, but he was a good coverage guy. He got you turnovers, is what you needed. I just feel that, these two guys, May, if he bounces back well from the Achilles surgery, and he also doesn't get suspended more than 3 games because he's got a DUI. Yeah, he's got a DUI. I think Mathieu will act more as a leader out there and organize that defense a lot more, just like Jenkins did. Straighten out the communication among the secondary. And I think they'll just scheme their way to better coverages. And you have the athletic players that you can vary your scheme a lot more without overwhelming them, So I think the defense as a unit will be better, if not the individual players, like Jeff Duncan saying that the defense secondary took a step back. I don't see it quite like that.
It'll look like that initially because there'll be some communication issues to get ironed out. But in the long term, it's hard to agree with Jeff there.
Yeah, I just feel like the coaches are better and the players are more athletic than what you had before. You're not replacing these guys you're not replacing Roman Harper and Malcolm Jenkins with a Jarius Byrd and a Kenny Vaccaro. That's not what you're doing. You've got much better players to replace those guys with. These are mostly some of these guys. I don't know if Daniel Sorensen's even going to make the team now, honestly. I think the second round pick has a good chance of beating him out.
Yep.
He was brought in really for special teams leadership.
Yeah, and if Justin Evans is anywhere close to what he was in 2017, 2018 as a second-round pick before his injuries, or Smoke Monday is anything like the Saints fans hope he will be, if either of those things pan out, I don't see a place for Daniel Sorensen on this roster.
I really don't either. I think Sorensen was one of these guys you brought in a just-in-case guy. You're bringing him in case you can't get good bodies out there, and I think that's the issue. That's how you have to look at these guys. So, I do you see any more moves? I'll ask both of y'all this. I know I said was going to be the last question. This is the very last question. Do you see the Saints making any more moves before mini camps and the OTAs really get started over these next couple of weeks?
No,
Sean?
I don't.
Bob, do you?
I see maybe a running back. And we mentioned Sony Michel. I'd like to bring in a Jordan Howard if his knees are holding up. But a guy like that. And however, it would surprise me if they did it before OTAs, because I think they want to see what they have in those younger guys, see the development of Tony Jones, see how Abram Smith runs and their blocking system, things like that. So that way they have a better feel. But I think even if they feel confident with those guys, I do believe that we will see at least one veteran back be brought into Saints the organization before training camp.
I think there's still a possibility that they bring in a receiver too, even though they got Olave and Thomas. I think they'd like to get a veteran in there, just one more veteran for the locker room. So if that's Jarvis Landry, I don't know, but Jarvis Landry's obviously a target. I think Landry has to come way down on his price and realize he's only going to get a 1-year deal, and there's not even a guarantee he's going to, going to make the team. But they're throwing some names out right now. Landry, Calvin says no. Will Fuller, the problem with Will Fuller is he probably injures his hand signing his contract. So Will Fuller is an incredibly talented receiver, but he just cannot stay healthy. Right. But Landry's got to go way down on his price to come to this team. I don't see a veteran tight end at all. I mean, we went over a couple of names before. I don't see Jimmy Graham coming back here. I certainly don't see Ibram coming in or bringing back Cook. I just don't see those guys coming over here.
Kyle Rudolph is the only possibility, but I give that a very slim chance.
Yeah, Kevin White's still in his team, but I wouldn't hold out that he's going to be here past training camp. He may be one of those guys they cut unexpectedly during the off season. Quan Baker, this is going to be a training camp to see if he's developed any. I don't know what's going to happen with him.
I mean, Kawan Baker and Jalen McCleskey are two names to watch. But with Olave on this team, you got Deontay Hardy, Marquez Callaway, and they're bringing back Trash Quan Smith. I don't see much room to bring in other wide receivers. A veteran is a possibility, like you said, Alan. But really, unless it's a guy that's going to be a dynamic kick returner in addition to adding depth at the back end of that receiving chart, there's really no open spots on that roster there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just it's right now they're looking at inexpensive guys and guys that aren't guaranteed even roster spots. If you're bringing in a guy like a Landry or Will Fuller or someone like that, you're bringing in the challenge Callaway. You're bringing in the challenge Traquan Smith. Show you can run block as well as catch passes. You've got to show that you're worth something to keep around. You're not going to be number one or number two. You're probably gunning for number 3, and you have to show that you can catch the ball better than a Callaway, to get his job. So anyway, that's just my ideas, just things to watch. I think the rookie OTA or the rookie camp is the middle of this month, maybe towards the end of this month, near Memorial Day, somewhere around that.
I think the beginning of the third week of the month.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of those Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of camps, not open to the public. You're not going to see very much. If it's going to be like Sean Payton, it's you won't see anything at all. But the full mini camp before they break is the middle of June. I know we just started the month of May, but the full mini camp's the middle of June because they have OTAs after that, and it's 3 weeks OTAs, and then they have mini camp, and then they take their break until the end of July. So football season will be on us before we know it. It's already going to be 90 degrees this weekend, so so much for spring.
I'm still waiting to get out of winter here. It'll be in the 50s this weekend.
It'll be 90 degrees and humid here. That's the worst part about it. I could deal with the dry heat. I cannot deal with the humidity. I'll just get too old. I can't believe I used to practice in that shit.
3 days.
No, we didn't do 3 days. Thank God. They weren't that mean to us. But we were 3 yards in a cloud of confusion. So it's not like we knew what the hell we were doing anyway. So yeah, it is. Falcons are fun to troll. This last comment, then we're going to go. But the Falcons are fun to troll. You know how we LSU fans and Saints fans like to fight and say, how come the Saints don't ever take LSU players? Georgia Falcon fans were like lighting up Twitter because I went to the Falcoholic because I was reading every time the Falcons were on the clock. I was reading what they were doing, and they were livid that they didn't take a single Georgia player. It was hilarious. It really was.
Everybody else did.
That's just it. That just fueled the fire even more. You had a record number of Georgia and record number of Cincinnati players go, and they're all going, I don't know why Arthur Blank hates the Georgia Bulldogs. We never draft any Georgia Bulldog players. Like, oh my God, this is Saints Twitter, except they got these are losers, So it was fun. It really was. Anyway, yeah, they were crazy, but they were upset. They were really pissed about Dean as he was falling down the draft boards. They were just every time I'm reading nothing but take Dean, get Dean, get Dean. What in the hell are they doing out there? Especially because they drafted another linebacker from like Montana State or something instead of getting Dean. So that was hilarious. It really was. And the guy's probably actually going to be a better player. But yeah. The best defensive player in college was too young to get drafted. Yeah, I said it. Who is that, Calvin? I'm afraid to ask. Yeah, there we go. Rookie minicamp, May 13th to 15th. OTAs, May 24th, 26th, 31st, June 2nd. So mandatory minicamp, June 14th to 16th. And then that's it until regular training camp. Will Anderson. Okay. Yes, they did. They finally got a player, but it was like they kept watching all the good Georgia players go. And that as Dean kept falling down the list, they couldn't understand why they weren't drafted. So yeah, it was very much like watching LSU Saints Twitter. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Thanks, John, for the comments. The draft is probably the main focus that we have. After this, we're going to be kind of struggling for topics, barring any kind of Saints dramatic news. And the offseason, you never want Saints news because it's always something bad. It
usually means somebody's got DWIs.
Somebody got arrested, somebody got hurt, somebody got cut, something like that. So
we took care of all that during the playoffs, so we're good.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.